Akyam. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakak Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone who teach and rule well, and Shalom to the sincere Akyam, spreading this truth and sincerity. Shalom. So in this video, I want to, speak on how an idle mind is basically the playground of the devil. The scriptures, basically speak on this as well, even though, it speaks on this in the context of having a servant working for you, and that an idle servant, idleness, basically teacheth, like scripture says, much evil. Which that is something that, I basically thought upon earlier this week about how you see, Amalek, the small hats, they don't really work, man. They don't really work. They're being provided for, by the state 9 times out of 10, at least in America, and in, Israel. And, you see them do all them funky business, man. All them funky business, And I don't really want to go into that, but yesterday I spoke with my colleague, who also happens to be an Amalekite, but he's from Turkey, and man, I happened to work with 3 Amalekites, to be honest, man. One from Greece, and 2 from Turkey, and point being is that he mentioned something, man. He mentioned something about because the weather was trash yesterday, and then we spoke about not having to work, and being able to do what you want. And he said that, man, if you don't have nothing, that you have going on for yourself, you're able to do that for a couple of days. He said, like 1 day, 2 day, 3 days, but the 4 days you're gonna go crazy in your mind because you have nothing to do. Then I told him, man, if I would have that capability, that possibility, I would know what to do, man. I would know what to do with my life. I would know what to do with my life, because I know how to stay busy by myself. But it's just, the affairs of this life, that cause us to be overly busy. It causes us to be overly busy and to be exhausted and to be tired and to spend most of the time during the day, slaving for Esau, But he mentioned, something. He said, yeah, there are people out there, that don't know what to do with all that free time. They don't know what to do. He spoke about another guy that he used to know that saved up a lot of money, had investments in Spain. He had money saved up in Australia. In the time that, he was able to retire, he said he didn't know what to do, and he didn't want to go there where he put the money, And I said, yeah, I know, I would know what to do. I would know how to stay busy, though, But that really is the case, man. If you really have nothing going on in your life, or if you have no ambitions or things that you like doing, you're gonna be basically roaming around. And eventually, you're gonna try to find distractions and do some evil shit, man. This is Sirach 33 in verse 27. Let me start at verse 26. No, let me start off at verse 25. If thou set thy servant to labor, thou shalt find rest. But if thou let him go idle, he shall seek liberty. So in this case, it's speaking about a servant, someone that has been tasked to work for another. And if you don't let him do anything, he's gonna try to find liberty, look for free time, free play, basically, freedom. And that's really the case, man. Even I'm able to see that with my work. If the work is done, or we're not really able to do anything, and the time is past, and you look at the time like it's already 2:30, 3 o'clock. You ain't gonna try to find work till 4. You know, you're gonna be busy for as long as possible, you know, and then you stretch it and then you just go, you know. But you ain't gonna go, you know, when you see there's limited time, you know, drive all the way to another place, you know, to do something for 30 minutes and then dip. You know, makes no sense, you know. But the point being is this, man. If you have nothing going on, if you are idle, you know, if you have nothing to do, you're gonna find, you know, freedom to do things, man. You know, so if you are someone, you know, that has nothing going on in his life, you know, you're gonna try to find freedom, man. But what if that freedom, you know, is not able to be filled with things that you like doing? Because there has to be, you know, a void, you know, that has to be filled up, you know, and it's either going to be filled up with things that, you know, are beneficial or that are not beneficial, you know. Verse 26, a yoke and a collar do bow the neck, so are tortures and torments for an evil servant. Yeah, so if you have, you know, a servant working for you, you know, back in the days especially, if you would punish him, you know, or you would, you know, put some burdens upon him, you know, that is basically able to make this man, um, how you say that, subject unto you. You know, he's gonna respect you again. Verse 27, send him to labor, that he be not idle, for idleness teacheth much evil. You know, and that's also what this what this colleague said. He said, yeah, man, after the four days, man, you're gonna go crazy, man. You know, and you know, not to talk shit about Jake, but you have a lot of Jakes, especially in America, you know, that have nothing going on, you know, for their lives, sitting on the block, you know, seeing how they're able to get by, you know, by wicked things, man. Not even in the righteous way, wicked things, man. Like the older man, you know, being on the streets, you know, trying to be gangsters and whatever, you know, and it's messed up, you know, the way that I basically bring it out like that. But that's basically because they're being idle, man, and we can talk about the reason why they're being idle, because it has been basically programmed like this, you know, by Esau as well, you know, of course through the curses upon our people, you know. But you know, it does serve a great example of what happens when you're being idle, man, when you have nothing going on for yourself, you know. And you do see when, you know, you have Jake out there that used to grow up in the hood and they try to step away from that, they get their first job, they're able to basically, you know, step away from the evil things going on in the streets, you know, and able to, you know, make a life for themselves. You know, might not be the life, you know, that you know they would, you know, like to have or envision, you know, but at least it's something decent, man. You know, like a mean cottage, you know, like a simple house, you know, not fancy and shit, but you got something going on. You know, in the moment that you got nothing going on in your life, you know, that's gonna teach you evil, man. So basically, you know, your mind is able to be filled and infiltrated. You know, like I said at the start of the video, you know, an idle mind is the playground of the devil, because he's able to put thoughts in your mind, you know, and things to steer your mind in certain directions, man. So you got to be busy, man, you know, especially with the right things. You know, we in this truth, we know what we should, you know, focus and spend our time on. But people in the world, you know, they have their quote unquote, you know, regular things that they are able to focus on. You know, career, house, family, you know, their fitness, you know, those are things to keep busy with, man, and to do that in the right way, in the right sense. You know, we in this truth, in Yahweh Shai, you know, we're trying to focus on this truth. You know, we're trying to focus on, you know, that which brings us salvation, you know, that which, you know, is able to bring us closer to, you know, what we desire, which is the kingdom. You see? So we should always, you know, stay busy and focus, you know, on things that are beneficial. You know, we should be able to focus on that. You know, and I think it's quite funny that I thought about it earlier this week, and slowly but surely, you know, even my colleague brought it out, man, because that's the spirit, man. That really is the spirit, because I really didn't think about, going into the scriptures like this and make a video about it. But the Spirit had me, guided towards that anyway. You see? So I'm gonna read it again. It says, verse 27, send him to labor. So basically, be occupied, man, that he be not idle, for idleness teacheth much evil. And evil is basically a bad time, so it teacheth much evil, things that create a bad time. So you're gonna occupy yourself with things that create bad times, bad situations for yourself. You see, because you're not productive, you're not busy, you're not busy with things that are able to bring you further, in quote unquote life. You're busy with things that, that bring you nowhere in life. Like those men sitting on the blocks, not having a job, getting their welfare, getting their whatever they are able to get, and just being at home the whole day, having those white socks with the black spots underneath, man. You see, we're not supposed to be like that. Scripture even says, he that doesn't work, doesn't eat. The scripture is trying to, educate us and promote us to, work with our hands, and to basically reap the reward of our labor, man. Both in the truth and outside of the truth. And these things actually coincide, because the things that we learn in the truth, we should apply outside of the truth, and that is basically, what, we should basically be doing, man. We should basically stay busy, because the moment that we're not busy, Satan is able to, enter into that mind of us, and steer us into the wrong directions. You see? So yeah, with that, I do hope and pray, that this video is edifying. And with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah Kodesh. Double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone, who teach and rule well, and Shalom to the sincere Akim, spreading this truth and sincerity. Shalom.